Hello everyone, 皆さんこんにちは. Welcome to the Japan America Society of Georgia's and Next Generation Manufacturing's virtual tour of YKK's Passive Town. We are so excited that you are joining us today as we go behind the scenes of Passive Town, a new eco-friendly residential complex that YKK is developing in Kurobe, Japan. So I hope that you all brought your passports today as we virtually go visit Japan. The complex makes use of solar light and heat, underground water, seasonal winds, and much more to cut back on energy consumption up to 60% compared to regular houses in the area. So we're certainly in for a very special treat. As I said, my name is Yoshi with the Japan America Society of Georgia. We are a nonprofit organization that brings together the Japanese and American communities together here in the state of Georgia. We have been doing a lot of programming, certainly virtually, to bring together the Japanese and Americans. But Japanese companies, we are the #1 foreign investor in the state of Georgia, as over 600 Japanese companies have operations here in our state, and they have invested over $11 billion in our economy. And those Japanese companies hire close to 37,000 people. And to kind of start everything off in the 1970s, one of the first Japanese companies, or maybe it is the first Japanese company to come to our state, was YKK. So kind of our story between Japan and Georgia kind of comes full circle today. So we're so excited. Before we get kind of started, we want to thank our co-sponsor, Next Generation Manufacturing, and our media sponsor, Global Atlanta, as well. But to get started with our program, we'd like to introduce the Executive Director of Next Generation Manufacturing, Ms. Regina Maddox. Regina, yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
Thank you, Yoshi. Thank you all. Thank you very much for including us in today's conversation. This is exciting to be a part of. And Jessica, thank you in advance for all the work that you and your team have done on this video. We are excited to share this with the manufacturers. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit manufacturing association. We connect manufacturers for the sharing of best practices and innovations and resources. And of course, one of those resources we count as the Japan America Society. They are very supportive of all manufacturers, and we also are happy to share that Jim Reed, the CEO of YKK, serves on our board, and we are able to work closely with Jessica on a number of other things. So we thank them for their support too. So for more information about our organization, you're welcome to visit our website at nextgenerationmfg.org. And another one of our partners that I'm happy to segue to and introduce him is Trevor Williams with Global Atlanta. Trevor's the managing editor and did I get that right, Trevor? Managing editor, yes, Global Atlanta. And again, another one of our partners too. So we're excited to be with you today and to be included in this conversation. And Trevor, I will segue over to you to take it from here.
Thank you, Regina, and I look forward to going with you on many manufacturing tours in the near future, hopefully once this pandemic has subsided, and potentially these Japanese companies in our state that are redefining sustainability in their operations in a lot of ways. I am going to speak more later, so I won't belabor my part of the presentation right now, but wanted to briefly introduce Jessica Cork, who's going to take us into the video. Jessica is the Vice President of Community Engagement and Communications for YKK. And as I told her before we started, I don't think she has enough titles for all the things that the company, and she's been particularly helpful to me in my reporting on Japan and on a recent trip to Japan last year when I was able to visit YKK Passive Town so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, but Jessica, why don't you take it away?
All right, great. Thank you so much, Trevor. And I'm really excited to be taking on a tour of Passive Town today. This is actually something I'm especially passionate about, not only because of my role with YKK, but I actually grew up in a home that was built by my parents. I think my parents are actually in attendance today. but our home, while maybe it was not necessarily a passive home, was a very energy efficient home that has a lot of the technology in it that you are going to see on our tour of Passive Town today. So I wanted to give a shout out to my parents and thank them for instilling in me a love for both architecture and also a very deep interest in sustainability, especially in housing. So to YKK, for those of you that may not know very much about us, YKK is a manufacturer of zippers and other fastening products, as well as architectural products. So we make curtain wall and doors and windows. And our headquarters are actually is located in Tokyo, but our largest footprint is in the city of Kurobe, which is in Toyama Prefecture. And we have over 6,000 employees working in Kurobe, and that is in a city that just has 40,000 people. So you can imagine, you know, our footprint there is quite large. And after the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, YKK made the decision to actually move some of its headquarters functions from Tokyo to Kurobe as a way to mitigate some of the risk that's associated with earthquakes in Japan. So approximately 230 people were either transferred or actually still in the process of being transferred along with their families. So you can imagine, you know, give or take 1,000 or so people making the move over there to Kurobe. And actually at the same time, the earthquake and then actually the subsequent meltdown at the nuclear power plant in Fukushima triggered a lot of debates in Japan about energy policy, because, you know, people really started to think about the shortcomings from things like nuclear power. So YKK actually at the time was already planning to rebuild some company housing that it already had in Kurobe. And we were also very cognizant of the fact that YKK and between its facilities, its manufacturing facilities and company housing, we actually consume half of all of the electricity that is used in the city of Kurobe. You know, half of it is because of YKK. So we have been already trying to cut down some of our consumption at our manufacturing facilities, and we're still really working on that. But up until the Passive Town development, we really had not tried tackling that problem with residential consumption of electricity. So, and then the other issue is, you know, we thought about things like solar power, but and other types of renewable energy, but that also can become a burden on the consumers and also on Hokuriku Electric Company. That's where we were getting all of our energy. So we wanted to try to find a way to provide stable power that would make the, you know, a minimal burden on everyone. So that's where we made the decision to implement passive design in this new housing complex. However, when we started this project, we really didn't know how to achieve this. The company had done a lot of research and found information on implementing passive design for detached houses, so homes that are kind of like standing along on their own, but really didn't know how to do it in big housing complexes or other types of building types. So, and then there was the other issue that one method of passive design is to use solar energy, but that's really not feasible in Toyama Prefecture because it actually has the most cloudy or rainy days throughout the year in all of Japan. So solar is kind of out. On the other hand, Toyama has a lot of water resources, including there's a big river called the Kurobe River that runs through the center of the city. So we knew, you know, that we might be able to harness some of the water resources. So we consulted with the architect Yurichiro Kodama and others about how to harness some of those local resources to create passive buildings that are uniquely suited to the climate of Kurobe. And spent a lot of time participating in study sessions on passive design. And what we ultimately realized is there's a lot of different approaches to realizing passive design. So we thought that we should put these different passive design ideas into practice. So what we did is we consolidated them into a 6-phase plan that is going to be building 250 residential units. And we decided to build 3 of those initial blocks first, and then once complete, move on to the remaining 3. So actually the first 3 blocks are now completed. The entire project is going to be done by 2025. But what I'm going to take you on a tour of today is blocks 1, 2, and 3. And you'll see all of this as you go through it in the video. But before we start the video, where I go through all the specifics, I do want to give you kind of an overview of the whole complex. Block 1 was designed by Yurichiro Kodama. And what I want for you to really look for when we're going to the tour on that part is how he utilizes the water in Kurobe. He really packed together all of the wet zones within the home, so they're all in one area. So like the kitchen, the bathroom, and the toilet spaces are all consolidated into one area. It uses radiant heat and cooling on each floor. And also really look in Block 1 at how the windows are used. The windows are used really as a tool. So all of the balconies with the windows on them are facing south. They have sliding doors that are designed to collect the heat in the winter. And there's a large shade that can be pulled down to soften the sunlight's effect in the summertime. And then if you look, the bedroom windows are actually more towards the back of the home, turning inwards so that you're not getting that light coming in. By contrast, Block 2, that was designed by Fumihiko Maki, and he's actually a giant in the world of architecture. He designed Tower 4 of the New World Trade Center in New York City, among many other buildings in Japan and all over the world, actually. And his design is really different. He does not have a single wall that runs straight through. So you'll notice that the way that the buildings are configured are kind of they're staggered, and there's a reason for that, which will be explained in the video. Also, every apartment inside has actually 3 outdoor spaces, which is kind of incredible. So it has a public terrace off of the living room. It has a private balcony that's further back, and it has a 3rd space where you can dry laundry, where people are not able to see it, but you're still able to not have to use a dryer to dry your laundry. And these outdoor spaces are really used to channel the breezes and to shade most of the windows from the sun. Mr. Maki also pays a lot of attention to insulation. So that's one thing you're going to have to look for. And then finally, in Block 3, designed by Miwa Mori, and her approach was actually to renovate. So this was not a new construction, it's a renovation of an older company dormitory that we had that was built in 1987. And the dormitories were actually already really small, but she was even able to downsize them even more, again, to save energy and save space. She added 3 more units, but instead she takes a totally different approach to the windows. I want you to watch that again. Rather than broad expanses of southern facing glass, she uses thick blankets of insulation, and there's just 2 small windows on the north and south walls of every apartment. So with that, I'd like to start the video. The video is about 21 minutes or so, and you'll hear me speaking throughout it, but we will play the video, and then I would be happy to answer questions at the end.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Cork, and I am Vice President of Community Engagement and Corporate Communications at YKK Corporation of America. Today, I am excited to take you on a virtual tour of Passive Town, YKK's sustainable housing development in Kurobe City, Toyama Prefecture, Japan. In the wake of the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, the YKK Group moved a portion of our headquarters from Tokyo to Kurobe. In Kurobe, we planned a project to address both a housing shortage for the employees and their families who would be transferring, and also to take on the issue of sustainable housing. The project is being developed on 36,100 square meters of land in Kurobe owned by the YKK Group, which used to be the site of company housing. It offers a residential area that makes use of solar light and heat, Kurobe's abundant underground water, seasonal winds, and the rich greenery of trees in an aim to break away from dependence on conventional energy. Passive design is used to reduce heating and cooling energy by 60% compared to regular houses in the Hokuriku region, and solar power to reduce hot water energy by 30%. We also use high energy equipment to reduce by 10% energy use for lighting, appliances, and in the kitchen. The plan is to build 250 residences by 2025. Blocks 1 through 3 are already complete with 117 homes. From the beginning, the development was also intended to integrate with the local community, which is why you will see no gates around the complex. Also available on the premises are commercial facilities such as cafes, restaurants, and a daycare center. In this way, we are contributing to the development of a convenient and open community. Before proceeding with the tour, I would like to show you a short video that explains the layout of Córdoba City and the special characteristics that make it especially suited to using passive energy.
Let us tell you a little bit about YKK zippers. YKK manufactures more than 2 million kilometers of zippers every year, which is equal to more than 50 trips around the Earth. Zipper production technology originated here in Kurobe, Toyama Prefecture. High-quality water is essential for manufacturing. Kurobe has an abundant supply of pure groundwater suitable for stable production. The magnificent fan-shaped delta of Kurobe is often called Japan's most beautiful alluvial fan. The area is blessed with one of the nation's richest water resources, with natural spring water welling up from various places that supply an extensive network of rice paddies. The reason behind the natural affluence is the heavy rainfall in the Kurobe River watershed. Annual rainfall is 3,500 millimeters, ranking it as the nation's 5th highest. The water that falls on the 3,000-meter-high mountains infiltrates into strata and flows 30 to 40 years before it starts to spring out. The natural spring water from the alluvial fan is almost 500 million square meters annually, which is equal to the volume of nearly 1.04 million 25-meter pools. The spring water welling up in the area has been used for drinking, cooking, cooling food, laundry, and other domestic purposes by local residents throughout the ages. YKK benefits from Kurobe's water in a variety of different processes, such as dyeing zippers. We are also working to develop a new air conditioning system using geothermal energy. We can expect to achieve high heat exchange efficiency from Kurobe's abundant groundwater. We believe this will improve the environment at the same time. Kurobe has taken advantage of its rich natural water resources for many different industries, such as agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism. Water is truly one of the treasures of Kurobe. Thank you, Kurobe. Thank you, groundwater.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Now let's get started with our tour of Passive Town. As mentioned before, Passive Town consists of a series of blocks, and each are designed by a different architect. Tadahiro Yoshida, the former chairman of YKK Corporation and YKK AP, decided to ask several different architects to each design one of the city blocks. Each architect works on how to best utilize the winds and the groundwater in their respective block. As the residences are completed and residents start living there, the energy consumption of each city block becomes clear, and we are releasing to the public data on all of the blocks. Mr. Yoshida admits that that may be kind of harsh for the architects, but we will intentionally release this data so that we can reference it in the future and see what materials and designs are needed to build buildings with low energy use. YKK's founding president, Tadao Yoshida, was a master of creating competition within the organization. Such competition would become the motivation for each employee to challenge themselves. There will always be failures when trying to achieve something new, and in fact, our core value to this day is do not fear failure, experience builds success. We're going to start with the landscaping. The landscaping of Passive Town was designed by Shunsaku Miyagi and includes an abundance of plants and waterscapes that are beautiful in all 4 seasons and maximize the Ai no Kaze, Kurobe's seasonal winds. I would like for you to take a look at this drawing of Block 1, which illustrates how the landscaping and buildings work together to make use of the natural resources of wind, water, greenery, and the sun. You can see that the wind blows from the north, passes through the gardens, and then through the back of the building. The air continues to flow through the building and is released out the veranda on the other side, where it can keep flowing through to the next set of buildings. Block 1 was completed in March 2016 and was designed by Yuichiro Kodama, who was also the designer of the master plan. This block features a wood chip biomass boiler for hot water and heating and makes use of Kurobe's groundwater for cooling. It also uses solar heat for the hot water supply. The housing complex has strategically placed windows to allow for maximum ventilation and has wind vanes on the roof as well as movable external shielding. It also relies on YKK-AP's triple glazed vinyl windows and 100mm thick exterior insulation as well as thermal bridging prevention methods on the balcony. So what we are looking at right here is a view of the entire Passive Town complex from the old company housing. You can see in the foreground Passive Town Center Common, which was built as a shared garden for all of the residents and members of the community to enjoy. This area also serves as a pathway for the wind to blow through the complex. Passive Home is home to about 100 species of plants and trees, and there are actually a total of about 550 trees planted in the complex. Here is the same graphic as I showed you a few minutes ago, but this shows how the water flows underground and into the building, as well as the location of the wood chip biomass boiler. You can also see how the verandas make use of the sun. In Block 1, the air that comes from outside is warmed in the winter by the biomass boiler and cooled in the summer through the heat exchanger and water tank that makes use of the underground water. In the center, you can see the vent in the home that allows the air to flow through. Here we are looking at the Block 1 building layout. The arrangement of the buildings is staggered so that the seasonal wind, ai no kaze, that is unique to Kurobe can pass through. Thermal energy from solar heat collecting panels installed on the roof is utilized for hot water, and a wind vane installed on the roof lets the wind into the buildings. Here we are looking at the Block 1 courtyard. The courtyard makes use of deciduous trees with thick foliage in summer to provide shade from the sun. Those same trees allow sunlight to enter the rooms in the winter when their leaves drop. The courtyard has a water feature that takes advantage of the subterranean waters unique to Kurobe's fan-shaped topography. A wooden vertical lattice is installed at each doorway to accommodate nighttime ventilation. This is a model room from Block 1. A small window is installed above the entrance of the room to let the breeze enter the room. The residence has radiant heating and cooling using indoor wall and floor panels that circulate hot water heated by a biomass boiler in winter and groundwater in summer. The home also has high-performance vinyl windows from YKK-AP. There is a wide terrace provided on the south side of the building and eaves on the terrace to block out the sun. Block 2 was completed in October 2016 and was designed by Fumihiko Maki, who is a giant in the world of architecture. Although Mr. Maki was excited to join the project, there was no architect who could design based on energy efficiency at Mr. Maki's firm. So Mr. Yoshida asked Associate Professor Masayuki Mae of Tokyo University Graduate School if he could join the project as an advisor. Professor Mae is an expert in eco-architecture who researches residents across the country, especially eco-houses, and he is also an expert at analyzing the efficiency of natural energies in homes. This block features a gas-latent heat recovery water heater and energy-efficient air conditioner. It also uses solar heat for the hot water supply. Like Block 1, it also has strategically placed windows to allow for maximum ventilation, and it has eaves. It also relies on YKK-AP's triple glazed vinyl windows and 100mm thick exterior insulation, as well as thermal bridging on the balconies. If you look at the graphic in the upper right, you can better understand the layout of the home. The wooden lattice that you see on the end of the building, as well as the southwest-facing terrace, allows the sunlight to enter in the winter, bringing in warm air, but the lattice also serves as a control against the afternoon sun in summer. The cool Aino-kaze wind flows in from the northeast and can exit through the balconies. The balcony makes use of the ISOCORB structural thermal bridge prevention system, which transfers the stress caused by loads on balconies to the building itself, while preventing the transfer of heat between balconies and interior slabs. It also uses the Stotherm cement-free external wall insulation system. Here we are looking at the Block 2 courtyard. Water sounds set up on the road in front of the commercial area create a cool atmosphere. A pavilion is located in the courtyard for relaxing. Here we are inside Block 2 model room. You'll notice the natural light and a breezy living terrace, a sunroom, and a veranda. The home also features high-performance vinyl windows from YKK AP. Now it's time to take a look at Block 3. Block 3 was completed in June 2017 and was designed by Miwa Mori. This was a renovation of an existing building and features homes for single occupants in a combination of flats and maisonette style. This block features an electric heat pump, water heater, and energy-efficient air conditioner. It also has eaves and movable external shielding. And like the other blocks, it relies on YKK AP's triple glazed vinyl windows and exterior insulation, as well as thermal bridging on the balconies. The existing building was remodeled into a three-dimensional structure. Type A is a flat type with an open floor plan. Type B is a maisonette structure with stairs leading up and down to the bedrooms. The renovation included improving the thermal environment, changing the materials used on the balcony to mitigate heat loss, and downsizing the size of the homes to reduce the structural load. And here you can take a look at a model room in Block 3. As we mentioned before, this was a renovated model that uses the old corporate housing, Building J and Building K. All of the rooms in this building are for single people. Here you can see some of the high-performance vinyl windows. But the point of Passive Town is not just to create a sustainable housing complex. External experts are leading assessment work on the town's energy consumption performance and passive design based on actual measurements and exchanging opinions with the residents to verify their lifestyles. These results are not only reflected in our own product development, but also published outside the company in the hope of contributing to the construction industry as a whole. The entire complex is evaluated by a third-party organization called the Passive Design Performance Evaluation Committee. Assessments include asking whether the weather conditions were actually as envisioned by the building designer. Regarding energy consumption, what figure was achieved against the target? How was the resident satisfaction level? Is the indoor thermal environment within the comfort range for both summer and winter? We are working with a variety of experts at universities across Japan to properly assess the results. We are very pleased to report that the first 3 blocks have achieved or surpassed the target set at the beginning of the project on all measures, including heating and cooling, hot air, and lighting and electricity usage. Building K in Block 3 was named winner of the 2017 Lead Homes Award in the Outstanding Multifamily Project. It was the first in Japan to be named a winner. Passive Town also obtained the top 5-star rating under the Building Housing Energy Efficiency Labeling System, or BELS, in Japan. In addition to homes, Passive Town was also designed to contribute to the community in other ways. The complex includes a daycare center that cares for children between 0 and 2 years old. Also, Passive Bazaar is a cafe that sells a variety of items from several local stores, including Cafe Bonfino, coffee from YKK's own coffee plantation in Brazil. Passive Kitchen features halal and other international cuisine to meet the needs of YKK employees from all over the world who come to Kurobe to train for extended periods. The community center is a gathering place for residents and other community members. It also has energy-efficient appliances such as solar-powered lighting and electricity and hot water, and heat generated from pellet stove that use biomass fuel. Here we are looking at the Passive Town Community Center located in Block 3. This has a community kitchen which is open to anyone that lives in the complex or to members of the local community. We also are taking a look at the courtyard that is right outside the front door. Okay, everyone, we have almost come to the end of our tour, but before we go, I'd like to show you one last look, which is a panoramic view of the entire complex as we're walking down the main street. So here, once again, we are looking at Block 3, Buildings J, and then Building K with the community center on the first floor. And then we continue down the street, and behind that, we see Block 2. And the first business we come to is Passive Kitchen. Remember, this is the restaurant that caters to international visitors in particular and serves halal food. So you can see that right there in the first floor of the Block 2 complex. And then just beyond that, we can see Passive Bazaar, which is where a variety of items are sold, including YKK's own Cafe Bonfino coffee from our plantation in Brazil. And then continuing down the street, right behind that, we will come to Block 1. You can see the wind vanes on the top of the home. And you can see the Tampopo Daycare Center there in the first floor. So I hope that all of you have enjoyed this tour of Passive Town today. Really enjoyed showing you around, and I hope that if you ever have the opportunity to visit Kurobe, please come and visit Passive Town and take a look around yourself. Thanks so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks so much, everyone, for bearing with us while we had to do the tour by video. I do have to give some also thanks to my colleagues in Kurobe. When I approached them with this project, they very good-naturedly, went out and took that video for me. And you may have heard me mention before, but Kurobe has a lot of rain. And I think it took them over a month to be able to find a day where it wasn't raining so that they were able to take the video. So I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, Trevor, I'd like to turn it over to you. You've been to Kurobe, so I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I was going to say, you won't get a better tour than this, even if you go in person. I mean, I feel like this was very comprehensive, and a lot of the information does tend to wash over you a little bit because there's just so much that's being done. I mean, there's really nothing passive town when it comes to, other than the energy, obviously, when it comes to addressing these sustainability issues. You'll see behind me, I wanted to give people an impression of what Kurobe looks like. This is from one of the platforms of the Shinkansen. So you can see the mountains in the background. I'm so glad that you interjected about the river and the alluvial plain and everything like that, because it really is a beautiful natural environment. And obviously I was fortunate enough to go on a sunny day. And what struck me really about the development, I mean, I had been all over the city that day, so it was a quick visit, but it struck me, it was mentioned how open it is to the rest of the city, and how the park is for the use of the residents there, as well as the broader community. And I just felt like that exemplifies really YKK's approach to pretty much everything it does in community. And particularly, I started my visit that day with this place behind me, which is a YKK Center Park, where I was able to taste some of that coffee you were talking about. But just more generally, YKK just engaged in the life of Kurobe. One thing that wasn't mentioned, because I don't think I can do any more than the video did in terms of showing how great Passive Town is, but just more broadly, since we're talking about manufacturing, I thought it was interesting that YKK has other housing developments as well, which Jessica, you helped me visit, called K-Town, and it's a smaller development with smaller units that are sort of lower rent, but not low on amenities. I mean, very very nice place to live. Had a great cultural center there, and to me that gets at the broader issue here, which is that workforce housing and just taking a holistic approach to the workforce is a competitiveness issue. You talked about people moving from Tokyo. Of course, they're going to be requiring certain amenities, but when you universalize that a bit, I mean, here in Georgia, recruiting manufacturing workers has been really challenging for a lot of companies, and any edge have in taking that holistic approach to the workforce, I think is going to pay off from the company perspective. And that was really clear that YKK understood and does. I recall being at the latest Southeast US Japan conference in Savannah last year, and that being an issue that was brought up, that even in Georgia, from some of the Japanese owned companies here, that the zoning issues that precluded more affordable housing closer to the factories were becoming an issue. And so I think YKK obviously takes a broad view of what affects its broader community and its manufacturing workforce, and that's the kind of thing that struck me, I guess, most clearly. And of course, I wanted to try to find an expat assignment after I visited Passive Town and learned that there was a good daycare. So. But Jessica, you're the expert here, obviously. But you and I have talked previously about this kind of connection with the community, and I just wanted to get your sense for how this development has helped YKK connect better with its local residents and the broader community in Kurobe.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Well, first of all, you did mention about the other developments that we have too, and I did want to address that because it's not like this complex came out of nowhere suddenly. In the idea of it in 2011, we have actually a long history of developing various structures and buildings and things in Kurobe as a way, first of all, of course, for our own use in terms of our manufacturing facilities, but also for community use and just being able to make Kurobe a better place to live. So aside, actually K-Town, which you mentioned, is the newest one. That's even later than some of these buildings that are within Passive Town. How that came about is there is a train station an older train station in Kurobe, and we have a brand new Shinkansen bullet train station that just opened in 2015. And while it's really great to get a bullet train coming to your town, I mean, it means you can get to Tokyo in half the time that you could before. The downside to that is all of a sudden people are not going to the local train, not using the local train station. It's like the regular slow train, you know, the normal train. And so that area of Kurobe has a lot of restaurants around there and, you know, convenience stores, there's a hotel. Their livelihood depends on people coming and going from that train station. So when the new train station for the Shinkansen opened, which is like 15 minutes away, suddenly you have people not using that local station, and those businesses were really suffering. So I think it says a lot to our former chairman, Tadahiro Yoshida. He made the decision that we need a new dormitory area anyway. You know what, we're going to develop it right in front of that train station. And better yet, we're not even going to put a kitchen inside of those dormitories because people have to go out and they have to eat in those restaurants, which means that they're frequenting the local businesses, but they're also talking to one another. You can't go back into your apartment all by yourself and stay there all night and not interact. So he built that. That also is not necessarily passive design, but has a lot of energy efficient amenities to it. And also part of the complex was a facility called K Hall, and K is Kurobe, but K it's also shaped like a K. I'm sure that you saw it when you was there. But that is a shared facility that is for the use of both the employees who are living in those dormitories, but anybody in the community can come in and they can use that facility. So there's a big kitchen, there's a concert hall, there's a convenience store because all the young employees who are in their 20s wanted, you know, a convenience store that's open at 2 a.m. So that's in there. And that's a way to bring the community into the space. And then you've got these new employees that are living in the area. So it's really revitalized the downtown. We also did something similar with our museum, which is also relatively newly opened. So we used to offer plant tours anyway from time to time, but we renovated renovation is also very important to us. You don't just destroy the old buildings, you renovate where possible. We renovated one of our old plants that was no longer used, turned it into a museum, but it's really a hands-on museum that lets all the kids from the community and actually get, you know, kids and other visitors from all over Japan to come and learn about the company. You can do a zipper making workshop there, you can drink Cafe Bonfino, but really you would think looking at that, this is all a PR campaign for YKK, but it's not just that, it's about industrial tourism. How can we make Kurobe a place that people don't just want to live, they want to come and visit? Like what can bring people from surrounding communities to come in? And, you know, YKK is the biggest presence there. So we have a big ability to be able to draw people in. We also planted a big forest right in front of that center park area called Furusato no Mori. It's like the hometown forest, and it has numerous endangered species of trees. And the way that those trees were planted was through area school children, and the community came in and planted all the seeds together. So that's just such an integral part. And I have like a million other examples, and I'll take all of our time. But what I wanted everyone on this call to understand is that really Passive Town just developed out of a very long-standing tradition with YKK of really developing the local community, the local, you know, this is a small town, it's only 40,000 people, but this is where our home is. Our headquarters may be elsewhere, but this is our manufacturing facility. Most of our employees are there. And at least in Japan, how do we make that a great place to live? Now, with regards to Passive Town directly connecting to the community, there were a lot of things that were taken into account, even as part of that. So I think whenever we're starting a project, we never start the project without talking to people who live in the community. So we've been holding stakeholder dialogues since 2010 with a variety of people that live all different walks of life, young, old, business people, community people, housewives, you know, that come together and have these discussions. And so that group was definitely approached both before, during, after, and you know now it's continuing to talk about this complex. What do they need? What do they want? So that's one thing. The second thing is that this is company housing, but it's open to anybody who wants to live there. It's just on a, you apply to live there. So that's a little different than a lot of employee housing complexes in Japan. For those who don't know, having housing for your employees is very common custom. A lot of Japanese companies do this. Not very many Japanese companies open it up to anybody who wants to live there. We also, the other interesting thing about it is that we have a lot of overseas visitors who are YKK employees who are from places like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, US, other places that have to come to Kurobe for quite a long time, sometimes years. We actually have someone from Macon, Georgia, who just got back from 3 years, actually got married, while he was there, lived in Passive Town while he was there. And so we have foreign families living there, foreign visitors, foreign families. We have community people, and we have long-term Kurobe residents. So what you get within the complex are these people living together, working together, exchanging opinions, a lot of common area where they can gather outside. You can see there's big expanse of open spaces. The kids are out there playing soccer all the time. There's a water feature that runs through the middle. So when it's hot in the summer, you've got the families coming from the surrounding community. So it's really meant to integrate. Along with what you also mentioned, Trevor, was, okay, so what about the young people? So you really can't transfer a whole bunch of people from Tokyo to a town of 40,000 people and expect everybody's going to be happy about having been transferred. So the first thing that a lot of employees said to Mr. Yoshida was, well, there's nothing to do, So that's really where the Cafe Bonfino and, the halal restaurant, which also meets the needs of the Muslim, employees, and the Passive Bazaar, that's there to serve the needs also of just having a place to hang out, a place to go, something to do, something interesting in Kurobe.
Yeah, and I think I want to remind everybody that the Q&A box is open, and you're sort of running through some of the questions as you go here. I wanted to, we talked a lot about the environmental aspect, but you were again talking about the local population aspect, the industrial tourism part of things. And one of the questions we were discussing beforehand was, this is part of a sort of broader discussion of how do you rejuvenate rural areas or smaller towns, and I think that is a real universal issue that we can learn a lot from here in the US. We had a lot of folks in the Q&A asking, is YKK planning anything like this in its US operations? And I wondered if you wanted to address that, the rural urban divide and how that played into things, and then whether or not you're importing some of these ideas into your American operations.
Yeah, I wish we were. I would sign up to live there. No, I mean, unfortunately, we're not planning anything like this overseas, just because, again, back to the idea that in Japan, it's just such a common practice to have company housing. So if you'll recall that this project came out of the plan to move people out of the Tokyo headquarters and into Kurobe. So we had actually a big problem to solve, which was there was simply not enough housing in Kurobe. Kurobe, again, it's a small city, and we're talking about moving, 230 employees and their families. There just simply was not enough place to put them. So that's where this whole thing started from, was we need somewhere to put these people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, if we're going to do that, let's make sure we're taking the environment into consideration. And then, of course, we're always thinking about how can we make this a better place to live. But Kurobe, I also want to emphasize for YKK, is really, it's not an afterthought, like again, that the headquarters are in Tokyo, so that's where all the focus is. It's really not. Kurobe is really the center for YKK globally. Mm-hmm. All of our R&D is there. We have a massive R&D center. We have all the expertise in the company. The manufacturing operations is all there. That's where people go to train. And then a lot of the functions that were moved, like HR and the core functions, some of the finance, purchasing, was moved there. So thinking when you're going to have so many employees living in a place, you want to make sure that this is a place that they'll be happy and that they'll enjoy living. Now, what's really interesting, though, I mentioned to you, first of all, not everyone's happy about going from an urban area to a rural area. But the other thing is there were some problems that arose from this that we were not necessarily expecting at first to begin with. So when the first 80 people moved from Tokyo to Kurobe, the chairman, Mr. Yoshida, got them all together for lunch. And this is very typical of the way that he would do things, gets them all together to lunch. And he says, well, tell me honestly, like, what problems are you having, that you've moved here? Because if you're having a problem, like, I'd like to know. So the first one was housing. so number one, that's before a lot of this development was done. And then this development is still under construction. So it's not necessarily there's a room for everybody at the moment. So first of all, okay, there's not enough housing. And then secondly, a lot of people had never driven before. Like they're from Tokyo. So you live your whole life in Tokyo. You don't need a car, or people have a license but don't drive and don't really know, are not comfortable driving. And on top of that, now it's snowing. I mean, Kurobe is incredibly snowy. There's a lot of snow. So he started to, he grew up there, and so he hadn't really thought about this being an issue. And what it ended up developing into is we decided in 2 of the blocks, they were going to have underground garages, because it was such, first of all, it wasn't enough parking space, because most families need 2 cars, which they hadn't needed in Tokyo. They needed the car for the job and then the car, for the other spouse. And so 2 cars, and then also people not used to driving in snow, they didn't have to defrost the car and get the snow off the car and everything. So even though they knew they was going to drive up the cost of construction, underground parking, was put in as part of the complex. And again, underground so that you can't see it also. It's not, it's not destroying the sight line.
Yeah, I think you've addressed one of the questions again that somebody was asking about parking and where the vehicles might be and all that. And I was actually wondering that too, because that you don't count. So you could easily assume that maybe the folks aren't using them. But there was another question about related to that as to whether there are electric vehicle chargers on premises.
Yeah, I saw that question. I don't know the answer to that question, but I really need to ask that, because if not, there should be. I would think that maybe they had thought that, but I don't know how, extensive that technology is in Japan, or certainly in, in the Kurobe area. But I'm sorry, I wish I knew the answer, but I need to find that out.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And just to echo what you said about this being kind of the soul or the heart of YKK versus Tokyo, which is where the headquarters is. I mean, that's really evident. I don't know, maybe it was because I was, with some local people, but it was really evident that YKK is really, interwoven with the destiny of the town. I mean, the first thing I saw getting off the train was a big YKK AP sign coming down the escalator, and it's almost like YKK is welcoming you to its hometown. And I did get to try the zipper manufacturing workshop, and I have to say that I'm probably not going to be hired anytime soon on a YKK assembly line. But some of the other folks asking the questions here, we've got Paul asks, has this development been recognized by international architectural groups? I think that's a really good question, and it was something that I addressed during my visit, that it actually there have been inbound groups that have come and sought to learn from Passive Town, and I wondered, and the video mentioned the accountability aspect and the evaluation that's happening, and I wondered if you could address that a little more.
Yeah, sure. I don't have a whole lot of additional information besides what was in the video, but certainly, number one, we're working with those, universities throughout the country to look at all of the, so you don't want to just build it and then just let it go. You want to find out what is working and what's not working, because I love the idea of all these architects being pitted against each other. Actually, is what he's doing. Is he purposely decided, I'm not going to pick the same architect for every single one. I'm going to pick 6 architects. And he even told them, Mr. Yoshida told them at one point, okay, you really got to step up your game, because, this is a competition. Like, we want to, see who is going to get, we have those metrics in place of the target, who's going to get the best, the best target. So,
making
we're
the
just
results
starting
public too.
And making them public. And the point is, the reason why it's sometimes called the Passive Town model is because the idea is that this is almost an experiment. So we're going to learn that we are whatever technology that comes out of this is going to be able to be applicable to other places. And then also, I did want to mention, it was briefly mentioned within the presentation as well, but the building K was recognized by, as a LEED home, which is the first one in Japan to do so. And then there's also the organization within Japan called BELLS, which also recognizes energy efficiency. So, yeah. Oh, and also one other thing I just wanted to clarify, I did get a something that I mentioned about the R&D before. I want to clarify that I had said that the R&D is located in Kurobe, but that is for, that's like the global R&D function. But then we also, of course, have R&D taking place in other countries around the world. So Macon, also we're very proud of our Macon, R&D function as well. So I wanted to clarify that. But in terms of Japan, that a lot of that functionality is located in Kurobe.
Well, and I think this is an opportunity too for Georgia, because YKK has underpinned the strong sister city relationship between Macon and Kurobe, which I got to experience. I went to the Jimmy Carter Marathon. That was happening on the weekend that I was there, which stemmed from President Carter's visit to celebrate the 50th anniversary of YKK's founding. And I was, able to visit a hospital that's had some exchanges with Navicent Health in Macon. So there's just a lot that's underpinning this relationship that a lot of people don't. And I think, again, if we can take these universal aspects and kind of adapt them to our own context, that's kind of what these conversations are all about. There was one question about whether there is an aggressive town versus passive town. I think that was a joke. But it doesn't sound like YKK to me. But the other question was about the coffee plantation. And since that Bonfino fits into your desirability index there, I wondered if you wanted to talk about the coffee plantation and what was the intention behind this. Malcolm Trammell was asking that.
Right. I knew somebody was going to ask about the coffee plantation. Actually, I could tell you about our goat cheese farm too, which is the other thing that we have.
Nice.
So, it's interesting that the founder of the company, Tadao Yoshida, we deal with, apparel, so what you wear, and then we've got housing covered, architectural products, so if you think about the three things that are necessarily life like food, clothing and housing. So the food aspect, he was always actually really interested in that agriculture. And so we had purchased, some lands in Brazil and wanted to, grow something on it. And there was a lot of different, there was an employee that was sent, there all the way from Japan and sent with him, him and his wife, and went to Brazil and said, well, here's this plot of land, like make something out of it. And it turns out, the thing that was the best thing to grow there was coffee. So that plantation has been in existence for quite some time now. And they're growing our own coffee, which we have branded as Cafe Bonfino, and export that back to Japan. I wish it were available to all of us all over the place, but right now only available in Japan, but it is what we serve within our build, within the company in Japan. And then we also have 3 branches of that. So there's 2 coffee shops in Tokyo that you can go to. And then and then Kurobe now has, well, actually Kurobe technically now has 2 branches, because there's the one that you went to, which is inside of Center Park, where our museum is, and then we have the other one that's inside of Passive Town. And then I just want to briefly mention the goat farm too, just I think it's such a good story, is that was created by Tadahiro Yoshida, who's the son of the founder. And he knew, of course, of his father's interest in agriculture, and he loves visiting the Cafe Bonfino plantation. And he wanted to do something also. He really enjoys getting outside, and he loves cheese. And so he decided, and he loves Italian culture, going to Italy. And so he decided to start in 2011, I believe, started raising goats in Kurobe. And then eventually decided, well, if I'm going to go to this trouble to raise these goats to make this cheese, I'm going to make good cheese. I want to make cheese that's going to actually win some competitions and things. And so he started a company. His daughter runs it. It is not affiliated with YKK. It's a totally family-owned business. But again, it's just yet another good example of putting it in Kurobe, in a place that is going to help get Kurobe on the map. You can visit this place, you can buy cheese there, it's available on the internet, but he's entering that cheese in competitions all over the world. And it's already, even though it's only been in existence a couple years, but it is already winning, prizes within Japan. And I know knowing him, he's aiming for higher levels than that. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I found it interesting going through the museum. You could really tell that the founder Tadao Yoshida had a very global perspective. Early on, I think he spent some time in China, but he also had a very nature focused perspective, as many Japanese people do. I remember reading that the little passage about his departure from Kurobe and talking about the silver grass waving in the fields and things like that. So, very, very much integrated into the kind of founding ethos of the company, I think. I think we're running up on our time, and I'll probably ask Yoshi to come back in and close this out. But we did have one more question that I actually was curious about too, which is what are the savings between the passive design and conventional design? I think you said 60% versus,
yeah, total of about 60%.
Typical houses in that area. I wanted to know from a monetary perspective, like, are the savings sort of passed on to the employees, or like, do they just have lower energy bills because the consumption is low?
Yeah, so the rent, unfortunately, is pretty high on these apartments because, as you might imagine, they're pretty nice. So yeah, the rents are comparatively high, but yes, the energy savings, of course, because you're simply not using energy. So that's the whole point is that you should be able to get through most of the summer and most of the winter without having to really use much, turning on your air conditioning or turning on your heat. It's really only just in the coldest days and the hottest days. So yes, there is energy savings there as well. So hopefully it all balances out for the employees who live there.
Yeah, we got some questions about the wood chip boiler heating and the integration of the groundwater. I think the technical aspects, maybe folks can ask you offline and you can find them an answer.
Absolutely, sure. You can contact me.
Yeah, I thought the groundwater aspect was great too. Just one last plug for Kurobe. I mean, it's again a beautiful place to be. I sort of thought I need to have a writing retreat there somewhere up in the snowy mountains. But one thing that struck me was just the quietness. It's a very quiet place, much more peaceful than being in bustling Tokyo, as you might imagine. But that really just struck me. I was like listening find the background noise because there really wasn't any. It felt extremely peaceful, and great place to visit if you got time in Japan. It's really not that far from Tokyo on the Shinkansen. Now that there's the new station there, I think it was about 3 hours in Tokyo. And so I will turn to Regina, who's going to make remarks, and then Yoshi will close us out. Thank you so much, y'all. And read Global Atlanta. We've got a Japan-focused newsletter. We're writing a lot about all these 600 companies that are coming in, it seems like, every other day. Thank you so much.
That was, it was fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Trevor and Jessica. That was great. And I also enjoyed personally seeing the comments from all the attendees, the comments and the compliments to you, Jessica, and the team, and all the great work, as usual, leading by example, and it's fantastic. So thank you for including us in the conversation today. And Trevor, thank you for joining us. And I do want to share, I don't know if you had a chance to see that, Trevor, but Yoshi did share the link, the link to Global Atlanta, and specifically the page that leads to those articles about Japan and Asia. So
perfect. Thank you
for doing that. And just wanted to say thank you again. And Yoshi, I will just transition to you because I know you had a few words that you'd like to say before we close out. So I will segue to you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Regina. And thank you for all your support. We've done a number of joint events together, and every one of them having just a joy and so much fun to do, and also a big learning experience. So thank you and your team and Next Generation Manufacturing, all of your members, sponsors, and followers too. So hopefully we can do many more things once it's safe to do in person. And like Trevor said, visit some manufacturing facilities here in Georgia and beyond moving forward. So, and certainly a big thank you to Trevor Williams and our media sponsor, Global Atlanta, our favorite global and Atlanta media company, right? So yeah,
wow.
as mentioned in our chat box, you can visit more information about Global Atlanta through their link, and you can join their newsletter subscription for free, and then kind of learn not only about Japan, but other international news happening here in Atlanta and beyond. So, and then of course, finally, thank you to Miss Jessica Cork. Of course, she is Miss YKK and does so much for the company, but she is also our vice chair of the Japan American Society of Georgia, and our next chair coming in too. So we certainly look forward to working closely with her moving forward. And she's also secretary of the International Charter Academy of Georgia. So the first and only public immersion charter school here in Georgia that has half of the curriculum in Japanese and half the curriculum in English. So actually, I don't think Passive Town can kind of say that their Tampopo Yochien or the Tampopo Daycare have both English and Japanese curriculum, right? So that's something that here in Georgia that we have that maybe Kurobe doesn't have. So, but thank you again for everyone for joining us. I know it's hard to believe that it's December. We do have a number of events coming up, certainly as well. Tomorrow we have a rebroadcasting of art in the U.S.-Japan relationship program tomorrow morning, if you're able to join us. And then we also have a women's series that we're part of with 6 other international chambers and organizations, where we'll be kind of looking into how the Atlanta Community Food Bank is kind of dealing with the current struggle with the pandemic. And it'll be a very interesting and actually interactive program. So definitely join us for that program. And to close us out, we're going to have a Bonenkai, or a Forget the Year party virtually. What better year to forget than this year, on December 17th. So definitely visit our website at jasgeorgia.org. And I know Regina and her team at Next Generation Manufacturing has events all the time as well. So please visit her website for all of her upcoming events. But thank you again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Please stay safe and healthy. And we'll hopefully we can all visit Passive Town maybe next year in person. Take care, everyone.
Bye.